Jake Harrison walked into the biggest room he had ever seen. The walls were made of some kind of glowing metal that changed colors. Strange beings sat in floating chairs around him. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of pure light that shifted and moved. A few had 4 eyes and skin like Rockstar Jake, or his best uniform with the Earth symbol on his chest. He stood straight and tried to look confident, but inside, his heart was beating fast. He was here to ask these aliens to let humans join their group. The Galactic Council controlled most of the galaxy. Earth wanted to be part of it. Amy Foster stood next to Jake. She was a smart woman who knew how to talk to aliens. Her job was to help Jake if things went wrong. Behind them stood Ron Blake, a soldier who was there to protect them. All 3 humans felt very small in this huge room full of strange creatures. A tall being made of blue crystals stood up. His voice sounded like breaking glass when he spoke. "The humans want to join our alliance," he said. "I am not sure why these simple creatures think they deserve such an honor." Many of the aliens made sounds that Jake thought might be laughter. The insect-like beings clicked their jaws together. The light beings turned bright yellow, which seemed to mean they found something funny. Another alien spoke up. This one had 4 eyes and looked like he was made of gray stone. "They call themselves smart," he said, "but they fight wars against their own kind. They eat the meat of other animals. They get angry and sad like wild animals." He paused and looked at Jake with disgust. "They are beasts that pretend to be smart." Jake felt his face get hot with anger, but he tried to stay calm. Amy put her hand on his arm to remind him to control himself. Ron kept his face blank, but Jake could see. His jaw was tight. "We may be young as a people," Jake said in a steady voice, "but we have much to give. Our science has grown very fast in the last 100 years. "Stolen ideas," said another alien. This one looked like a giant spider with wings. "You took our technology from crashed ships. You cannot create new things on your own." All the aliens started making their laughing sounds again. Jake felt like he was a small child being made fun of by adults. He represented not just his government, but all humans everywhere. The weight of it pressed down on him. "Also," said one, "of the light beings turning dark red, your kind does not know how to fight real wars. You use feelings instead of logic. You waste time trying to save each other instead of winning. When trouble comes, you would only get in our way." Amy stepped forward. "What trouble?" she asked. The room went silent. All the aliens looked at each other with their strange eyes. Jake could tell they knew something important that they were not telling him. "That," said the crystal being, "is not something beasts need to worry about." The crystal being looked down at Jake like he was looking at a bug. "The Galactic Council has decided. Humans are not ready to join us. You are too violent, too emotional, too unpredictable. Come back in 1,000 years when you have learned to control yourselves." "But we can help," Jake said. "We have new weapons, new ships, new ideas." "Your weapons are toys," said the stone alien. "Your ships are slow and weak. Your ideas are the thoughts of children. We have been traveling the stars for millions of years. You have barely left your own planet." The insect alien clicked its jaws again. "Look at them," it said to the others. "They cannot even hide their anger. See how the male's face turns red? How the female's hands shake? How the warrior's muscles tense? They are ruled by their emotions like animals. We feel things strongly because we care," Amy said. "We fight hard because we protect what we love." "Love," said the light being, turning purple with what looked like disgust. "The most useless emotion of all. It makes you weak. It makes you make bad choices. It makes you sacrifice the good of many for the good of few." Jake wanted to argue, but he could see it was hopeless. These aliens had already decided humans were not good enough. They thought feelings were bad. They thought caring about others was stupid. They wanted everything to be cold and logical. "This meeting is over," said the crystal being. "Guards, escort these creatures back to their ship, and tell them not to come back until they have learned to be civilized." Large robot guards moved toward the humans. Jake wanted to fight, but he knew it would only prove the aliens were right about humans being violent. He let the guards lead him away. As they walked out, Jake heard the aliens talking about humans like they were dangerous animals. They talked about how humans could not be trusted. They said humans were too stupid to understand real science. They said humans were too weak to fight real enemies. Outside the council chamber, Jake stopped walking. His hands were shaking with anger. "They think we're animals," he said. "Let them think that," Ron said quietly. "Animals can be very dangerous when they need to be." Amy looked back at the closed doors of the council chamber. "They're hiding something big," she said. "Did you see how they all went quiet when I asked about trouble?" "Something's coming," Jake agreed. "Something that scares them, and they don't think we can help." "Maybe they're right," Ron said. "Maybe we can't help with their kind of problems." Jake shook his head. "Or maybe they don't understand what humans can really do when we have to." The 3 humans walked back to their ship. Behind them, the aliens continued their meeting, talking about the beast humans who thought they were ready to join the civilized galaxy. They had no idea that soon they would need these same beasts to save them all. 3 months after the aliens rejected them, loud alarms started screaming all over New Geneva Station. Lisa Wright sat at her computer, trying to understand what was happening. Her fingers moved fast over the buttons as strange messages came in from all over the galaxy. "Sir," she called to Commander Steve Parker, "we're getting emergency calls from everywhere. Many star systems are being attacked." Steve ran over to look at her screen. "Who's attacking them?" he asked. "I don't know," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "The aliens are calling them the Void Touched. The messages are really scary. They're saying whole fleets of ships are being destroyed. Entire planets are going dark." Dr. Ellen Hayes looked up from her own computer. She studied alien life forms for a living. "The Galactic Council has been getting ready for this," she said. "That's why they kept secrets from us. That's why they said we were too weak to help. They knew this was coming." Ron Blake, who had stayed on the station after their failed trip to the Council, studied the battle reports on his screen. "How long do we have?" he asked. Lisa looked at the patterns in the attacks. "They're hitting the outer planets first," she said. "If they keep moving this fast, they'll reach us in 6 months. Maybe less." Steve's face went hard. "What about the Council? Are they talking to us now?" "No," Lisa said. "Complete silence. None of the alien species are answering our calls." In the weeks that followed, broken reports came through space radio. The mighty hegemony had the strongest shields in the galaxy, but their fleets lasted only a few hours against the Void Touched. The Vextar insects could think together across huge distances, but they were being silenced one by one. The Luminari were made of pure energy and should have been impossible to hurt, but they were just disappearing. "They're not just losing," said Intelligence Officer Kevin Brown during a meeting. "They're being completely destroyed. Every advantage they had, every amazing weapon they bragged about, none of it works." Jake Harrison, who now worked as Earth's main alien expert, studied the reports with growing worry. "What exactly are we fighting?" he asked. Kevin pulled up pictures on the big screen. "Best we can tell, the Void Touched are creatures from another dimension. They exist partly outside normal space, which makes regular weapons useless. They eat organized thought patterns and get stronger as they destroy more advanced civilizations. So the Council species, with their perfectly logical thinking," Amy said slowly, "are the perfect food Jake finished. What about us? Dr. Hayes looked up from her research. That's the interesting part. Human brain patterns are messy compared to other species. Our emotions, our wild thoughts, our unpredictable behavior might actually help us. Steve leaned forward. Help us how? The void touched seemed to be designed to fight logical, predictable enemies, Ellen explained. They can read organized thoughts and counter them. But human minds are chaotic. We think with our hearts as much as our heads. We make decisions based on feelings that don't make sense to logical beings. So our emotions, the things the aliens said made us weak, Amy said, might be the only thing that can fight these creatures. Ellen nodded. More reports came in over the following days. The crystal beings who had led the council were now hiding in bunkers deep underground. The rock people who had called humans beasts were sending out desperate calls for help. The light beings who had laughed at human emotions were growing dimmer, as the void touched consumed their energy. Sir, Lisa called out during one of their daily meetings, we're getting a transmission. It's very weak, but it's coming from council space. Put it through, Steve ordered. The voice was broken and full of static, but they could tell it was afraid. This is Chancellor Morgak of the Hegemony, it said. Our fleets are gone. Our planets are dying. The void touched are everywhere. They're in our minds, eating our thoughts. We cannot stop them. The transmission cut out, then came back. Please, the voice said, and now it was definitely scared. If anyone can hear this, if anyone is still alive, run. Don't try to fight them. Just run as far as you can. The room went quiet. These were the same aliens who had called humans too weak to join their alliance. Now they were telling everyone to run away. How many ships do we have? Steve asked. 15, Ron answered. Against an enemy that destroyed the combined fleets of 47 advanced civilizations. And our weapons? Mostly projectile weapons. And nuclear missiles. Nothing compared to what the council had. Jake shook his head. But we have something they don't have. What's that? Steve asked. We have chaos, Jake said. We have emotions. We have the ability to do things that don't make sense. Ellen pulled up more data on her screen. I've been studying the few successful fights against the void touched. Every single time someone won, it was because they did something illogical. Soldiers who ignored orders to save civilians. Ship crews who destroyed their own ships to buy time for others. Actions that made no logical sense. Human actions, Amy said quietly. Exactly. The void touched are adapted to fight enemies who think logically. They can predict what a logical being will do. But they can't predict what a human will do when we're fighting for something we love. Ron stood up from his chair. So what do? We do? Steve looked around the room at his small team. We do what humans do best. We fight when everyone else says we can't win. We stand up when everyone else runs away. We protect what we love, even when it doesn't make sense. The Council will never accept our help, Jake warned. They still think we're beasts. Then we'll show them what beasts can do, Steve said. Lisa, send a message to Earth. Tell them we need every ship, every weapon, every person who can fight. Tell them the galaxy is in danger, and we're the only ones who can save it. What about the Council species? Amy asked. If they want our help, they'll have to ask for it, Steve said. And they'll have to accept that we do things our way. Outside the station, the stars looked the same as always. But Jake knew that somewhere out there, in the dark between the stars, something was moving toward them. Something that had destroyed the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Something that thought humans were too weak to be worth eating. Soon, they would learn how wrong they were. The message came through on a channel that had been silent for months. It was the same frequency the Galactic Council had set up for what they called lesser species. The signal was weak and full of static, but the fear in the voice was clear. "This is Speaker Zethgri of the Galactic Council." The crystal being's voice cracked with interference and terror. "We formally request aid from the Terran Federation." The bridge of the U.E.'s Defiance went completely silent. Admiral Kate Sullivan, who commanded humanity's small fleet, looked at her officers with surprise. Nobody had expected this. The same aliens who had called humans beasts were now asking for help. Admiral, Communications Officer Tim Rogers said, "We're getting similar messages from 17 other council species. They're all asking for help. Some of them are begging." Jake Harrison, who now served as both ambassador and military advisor, couldn't stop himself from smiling bitterly. "The same species that told us we were too primitive to join their alliance 3 months ago. What's happening out there?" Admiral Sullivan asked Doc Major Rick Davis, their intelligence officer, turned on the big display screen. "It's bad, Admiral. Really bad. The void touched had destroyed about 60% of council space. They're moving faster now, getting stronger with each victory. Our computers say they'll control the entire galaxy in 8 weeks. And our forces? 15 ships, Admiral, against an enemy that wiped out the combined fleets of 47 advanced civilizations." The weight of the situation pressed down on everyone on the bridge. They were humanity's only hope, and they were greatly outnumbered and outgunned by an enemy they barely understood. "There's something else," Dr. Hayes said from her station. "I've been studying the few times anyone succeeded against the void touched. Every single victory involved what the council species called irrational behavior. Soldiers who ignored orders to save civilians. Ship crews who destroyed their own vessels to buy time for others. Actions that made no logical sense. Human actions, Amy Foster said. Exactly. The void touched seemed to have trouble predicting and fighting against emotional responses. They're designed to fight logical, predictable enemies." Admiral Sullivan stood up, her mind made up. "Signal the council. Tell them we'll help. But we do this our way, with our methods." "Admiral," Jake warned, "they're not going to like taking orders from the species they thought was inferior." "Then they can enjoy being extinct," she replied coldly. "Because right now, we're the only ones with a chance of stopping this." The first response came from Speaker Zethgri. His crystal form appeared on the main screen, but he looked different now. His usual bright blue color was dim and gray. Cracks ran through his crystalline body. "Admiral Sullivan," he said, "we are grateful for your offer of assistance. However, we must coordinate our remaining forces according to established military doctrine. Our tactical computers have calculated the most efficient deployment of your vessels." "No," Admiral Sullivan said simply. "I beg your pardon?" "I said no. You called us beasts. You said we were too emotional, too unpredictable, too chaotic to be part of your alliance. Well, now you need beasts. And beasts don't follow your computer calculations." Zethgri's form flickered with what might have been anger. "Admiral, this is not the time for pride. The fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance." "Exactly," Sullivan replied. "Which is why we do this the human way. Your logical, predictable methods have failed. Your perfect formations and calculated strategies have been useless against the void touched. We're going to try something different." Another alien appeared on the screen. It was Chancellor Mordak, the gray stone being who had been especially cruel to the humans during their first meeting. Now he looked desperate. "Admiral Sullivan," he said, "surely you understand that we have millions of years of military experience. We have fought wars across the galaxy. We know how to coordinate fleets, how to maximize firepower, how to minimize losses." "And where did that get you?" Jake asked, stepping forward. "Your fleets are gone. Your planets are dark. Your people are dying. Maybe it's time to try something new." A new voice joined the conversation. It was one of the Luminari, the light, beings who had laughed at human emotions. Now their light was weak and flickering. "Please," they said, "we are running out of time. The void touched have consumed 80% of our people. We need immediate tactical support." "Then you'll get it," Admiral Sullivan said, "but under human command. We know how to fight these things. Your people don't." "Impossible," Morduk said. "We cannot place our remaining forces under the command of a species that has never fought a galactic war." "Have you fought the void touched before?" Amy asked. "No, but we have fought many other enemies." "And how did that work out for you?" This time, the aliens went quiet. They knew she was right. All their experience, all their advanced technology, all their logical thinking had been useless against this enemy. "We have studied the few successful engagements," Dr. Hayes said. "Every time someone beat the void touched, it was because they did something unexpected, something that didn't make sense according to military logic. And humans are very good at not making sense." Ron Blake added with a grim smile. Speaker Zeeth Kree's form flickered again. "What are you proposing?" "Joint Fleet Command under human leadership," Admiral Sullivan said. "Your ships, your weapons, your people, but following human tactics and strategies." "Our crews will not understand human methods," Morduk objected. "Then they'll learn," Sullivan replied. "Or they'll die. Those are the only two choices left." The transmission was quiet for a long moment. Jake could imagine the aliens discussing among themselves, their logical minds trying to process the idea of following the commands of the beasts they had rejected. Finally, Zeeth Kree spoke. "Very well, we accept your terms. But if this fails, if your chaotic methods lead to the destruction of our remaining forces, the responsibility will be yours." "The responsibility was already ours," Jake said quietly. "The moment you decided. We weren't good enough to help before." Admiral Sullivan began issuing orders. "All ships prepare for immediate deployment. We rendezvous with the surviving Council fleets at the Kepler 442 system. From there, we take the fight to the void touched." "Admiral," Tim Rogers said, "incoming transmission from Earth Command. They're asking for a status report." "Tell them we're about to attempt the impossible," Sullivan said. "Tell them we're going to save the galaxy with 15 ships and a lot of human stubbornness." As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Jake looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an enemy that had destroyed the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy was waiting for them. An enemy that fed on logical thought and predictable behavior. But they were about to face something they had never encountered before. They were about to face humanity. And humanity, with all its chaos and emotion and unpredictable behavior, was very good at doing the impossible. The first joint battle happened in the Kepler 442 system, where the last of the Vexstar insect fleets had made their final stand. The void touched had surrounded the entire system with their dark ships. These enemy vessels phased in and out of reality like ghosts, preparing for their final attack. Remember, Admiral Sullivan told her mixed fleet of human and alien ships, "Logic and predictable moves are what they expect. We're going to give them chaos instead." The battle began unlike any fight in recorded galactic history. Where alien fleets had always maintained perfect formations and followed textbook strategies, the human-led force seemed to operate on pure madness. Captain Dan Cooper of the U's Valor charged straight into the enemy formation. His ship's engines were pushed far beyond safe limits. "Come on, you interdimensional bastards," he shouted over the radio. "Let's dance." The void-touched creatures pulled back in surprise. Their shadowy forms flickered as they tried to understand what seemed like a suicidal attack. But Cooper's ship wasn't alone. 3 luminary vessels followed him, their crews finally learning what humans meant by controlled chaos. They flew in a weaving pattern that made no mathematical sense. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Chief Engineer Pete Walsh. "Engines at 140% capacity." "Then let's push them to 160. Cooper shouted back. His crew cheered instead of showing a logical fear that should have come with such a dangerous order. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Sullivan watched the battle unfold on her screens. The void-touched ships were fast and deadly, but they seemed confused by the human tactics. Every time they predicted where a human ship would go, it went somewhere else instead. "They're not used to fighting crazy people," Amy Foster observed, watching from the tactical station. "Good thing we brought plenty of crazy," Jake replied. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human commanders made decisions based on gut feelings and emotions, while their alien allies slowly learned to embrace the madness. The void-touched, creatures of pure logic and order, found themselves facing an enemy that didn't behave according to any predictable pattern. Lieutenant Commander Bill Stone of the UES Hammer saw a damaged Vextar ship drifting helplessly in space. Logic said to leave it and focus on the mission. But Stone didn't think with logic. "All power to shields," he ordered. "We're going in." "Sir, that's suicide," his tactical officer protested. "Probably," Stone agreed. "Do it anyway." The Hammer dove through a wall of enemy fire to reach the insect ship. Stone's crew worked frantically to transfer the surviving Vextar to their ship before the enemy could destroy them both. It was a move that made no strategic sense, but it saved hundreds of lives that the rescued Vextar couldn't understand why humans would risk their lives for insects they barely knew. But they began to fight with new determination, inspired by the sacrifice. "This is impossible," one of the void-touched entities transmitted. Its voice sounded like metal grinding against metal. "These creatures fight without logic. They make decisions that harm their own tactical position." "That's the point," Captain Cooper replied, somehow managing to communicate directly with the entity. "We don't fight for tactical positions. We fight for each other." The entity's form flickered as it tried to process this concept. In that moment of confusion, Cooper's weapons found their mark. The void-touched ship began to fade, retreating back to its own dimension. "They're falling back," reported Lieutenant Julie Kim from the sensor station. "The void-touched are actually retreating." But the victory came at a terrible cost. The U's Valor was badly damaged, drifting in space with massive holes in its hull. The Luminary ships had pushed their energy systems beyond safe limits, and several had gone completely dark. "Casualty reports?" Admiral Sullivan asked. 30% losses, Admiral," came the grim reply, but the void-touched lost more. For the first time since this war began, they've been forced to withdraw. In the aftermath, Speaker Zethkri's transmission carried a tone of amazement. "Admiral Sullivan, your tactics defy all military doctrine. How did you know to sacrifice so many ships for what appeared to be a minor tactical advantage?" "We didn't sacrifice them," Sullivan replied. "We saved them. Every ship we lost was trying to save others. Every life we lost was protecting someone else. That's not sacrifice. That's what we do." "But it makes no logical sense," Mordak protested. "Your tactical computers must have calculated that those rescue attempts would result in greater losses." "We don't fight with computers," Jake said. "We fight with our hearts. And our hearts tell us to protect each other, even when it's dangerous." Dr. Hayes had been studying the enemy ships during the battle. "Admiral, I'm seeing something interesting. The void-touched ships seem to have trouble targeting our rescue operations. It's like they can't understand why we would risk ourselves for others. They're adapted to fight logical enemies," Ellen continued. "Enemies who would abandon damaged ships to save resources. Enemies who would sacrifice the few for the many. They don't know how to counter enemies who do the opposite. On the damaged Valor, Captain Cooper limped back to the main fleet. His ship was barely holding together, but his crew was singing. Actually singing, as they worked to repair the damage. "Sir," his engineer reported, "we've got life support back online. Weapons are at 50%. We can still fight." "Of course, we can," Cooper grinned. "We're humans. We're too stubborn to die." The alien crews who had fought alongside the humans were amazed. They had seen species retreat after suffering minor damage. But these humans were talking about continuing to fight after losing almost everything. "I do not understand," one of the Vexstar commanders transmitted. "Your ship is critically damaged. Your weapons are compromised. Logic dictates that you should withdraw." "Logic can kiss my ass," Cooper replied cheerfully. "We've got friends to protect." Admiral Sullivan called a fleet meeting to plan their next move. The holographic forms of dozens of alien commanders appeared on her bridge, along with her human captains. "We hurt them," she said without preamble. For the first time since this war started, the void touched actually ran away. "That means we can win this." "At what cost?" asked one of the crystal beings. "We lost 30% of our force in a single engagement." "And the void touched lost more," Sullivan replied. "They're not used to fighting people who won't give up. They're not used to fighting people who care more about others than themselves." "But Admiral," Mordock said, "if we continue with these tactics, we will suffer terrible losses. Our people will die." "People are already dying," Jake said quietly. "The question is whether they die running away or die fighting back." Ron Blake, now commanding his own ship, nodded. "I've been in a lot of battles. I've seen a lot of different enemies. But I've never seen an enemy that was confused by courage. And that's what we have that they don't expect. Courage and chaos," Amy added. "They can predict logical moves, but they can't predict what someone will do when they're fighting for love." The alien commanders looked at each other with their strange eyes. They were beginning to understand something they had never grasped before. Human strength didn't come from superior technology or logical thinking. It came from something deeper, something that couldn't be calculated or programmed. "Very well," Speaker Zethkri said finally. "We will continue with your methods. But I must ask, what makes you so certain we can win?" Admiral Sullivan smiled. "Because we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for all of U.S. And when humans fight for something we love, we don't know how to lose." The final battle took place at the center of the galaxy, where the Void Touched had built their main feeding station. A combined fleet, now truly unified under human leadership, faced impossible odds. 10,000 enemy ships surrounded the dark structure, their forms shifting between dimensions as they prepared to consume the last organized resistance in the galaxy. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan." Her voice carried across the fleet to vessels of dozens of different species. "Today, we're not fighting as humans, or Vexstar, or Luminari. We're fighting as something new, something they can't understand or predict." Captain Blake, now commanding the rebuilt Use Valor, grinned at his mixed crew of humans and aliens. "You heard the Admiral. Let's show these things what it means to be alive." The battle that followed would be remembered as the Day of Divine Fury. Human Marines, carrying weapons that shouldn't have been able to harm creatures from other dimensions, fought alongside energy beings and crystal warriors. The secret wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their unity, born from shared struggle and their refusal to give up even when logic said they should. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster led a boarding party onto the main station itself. Her team included humans, Vexstar insects, and Luminari, light beings working together like they had trained for years. They moved through the dark corridors of the station, following signals that led to the heart of the enemy stronghold. "The energy readings are off the charts," reported Dr. Hayes, who had insisted on joining the mission. "This thing is feeding on the thoughts of billions of beings." "Then we shut it down," Amy said simply. They found the central chamber, a vast space filled with swirling darkness. At the center, a massive void-touched entity pulsed with stolen energy. When it sensed them, it turned toward the boarding party. "You feel love," it said, its voice like grinding stone. "For these beings who are not your species. For these creatures who called you beasts, this is illogical." "That's what makes us strong," Amy replied, raising her weapon. "We don't fight for logic. We fight for each other." The creature recoiled as her shot somehow found its mark. Around the station, similar scenes played out as boarding parties pushed deeper into the structure. Human emotion, the thing the Galactic Council had said was humanity's greatest weakness, was proving to be their most powerful weapon. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Sullivan watched the battle unfold. The enemy had superior numbers and technology, but they were losing. Every time they tried to predict what the combined fleet would do, the fleet did something else entirely. "Admiral," Communications Officer Lisa Wright reported, "the station is destabilizing. The boarding parties are doing something to the power core." "All ships begin withdrawal," Sullivan ordered. "We're not done yet." But Captain Cooper had other ideas. His ship was badly damaged again, barely able to move. Instead of retreating, he aimed the Valor straight at the enemy station. "Cooper, what are you doing?" Sullivan demanded. "What humans do best," he replied calmly. "Something crazy that just might work." The Valor, with its engines pushed far beyond safety limits, slammed into the station's main power core. The explosion that followed lit up the entire system. The station began to collapse, taking with it the anchor that allowed the void-touched to exist in normal space. "Sir," reported Technical Officer Paul Adams, "the readings are incredible. The dimensional barrier is collapsing. The void-touched are being pulled back to their own dimension." Across the galaxy, the remaining enemy creatures began to fade. Without their main station, they couldn't maintain their presence in the real world. They were returning to whatever dark dimension they had come from. "We did it," Jake said quietly. "We actually did it." 6 months later, the Galactic Council met in new chambers on New Geneva Station. The surviving species had asked humanity to host the meeting, something that would have been impossible to imagine a year before. "The Terran Federation is granted full membership in the Galactic Alliance," announced Speaker Zethgri. His crystal form was brighter now, repaired and renewed. "Furthermore, we formally request that Admiral Sullivan serve as Supreme Commander of our combined forces." Jake Harrison, now Earth's main representative to the galaxy, stood to address the assembly. "We accept membership, but not supremacy. We're stronger together, each species contributing their unique abilities." "Indeed," agreed Chancellor Mordak. His gray stone form seemed warmer somehow. "We called you beasts because we feared what we didn't understand. Your emotions, your unpredictable behavior, your capacity for both destruction and creation. We thought these were weaknesses." "And now?" Jake asked. "Now we understand," replied the luminary delegate, their form glowing with golden light. "You possess something we had forgotten in our pursuit of perfect order. You have divine strength, the strength to care beyond logic, to sacrifice beyond reason, to hope beyond evidence." As the assembly voted to create the new alliance, Amy Foster watched from the observation deck. The galaxy had been changed forever, not by superior technology or military might, but by something far more powerful. The human spirit that refused to surrender, even when facing the impossible. "What are you thinking?" asked Captain Blake, joining her at the large window that looked out at the stars. That maybe being called beasts wasn't completely wrong, she replied with a slight smile. We are beasts in the best possible way. We're wild, unpredictable, dangerous when cornered. But we're also capable of love, sacrifice, and hope on a scale that even we don't fully understand. And that's our divine strength? Amy nodded, watching as ships from dozens of species worked together to rebuild what had been lost. That's our divine strength. The strength to remain human, no matter what the universe throws at us. A memorial. Service for Captain Cooper and his crew was held the next day. Representatives from every surviving species attended, something that had never happened before. The crystal beings sang in harmonics that made the air shimmer. The Vextar performed a flight pattern that spelled out Cooper's name in their ancient language. The Luminari created a light display that told the story of his sacrifice, but it was Jake who gave the main speech. He stood before the crowd of humans and aliens, looking out at faces and forms that had once seemed so strange and hostile. Dan Cooper died doing what humans do, Jake said. He protected others, even when it meant sacrificing himself. He didn't calculate the odds or consider the logical outcome. He just saw people who needed help, and he helped them. He paused, looking at Speaker Zethkri. A year ago, you called us beasts. You said our emotions made us weak. You said our unpredictable behavior made us unsuitable for civilized society. Zethkri's crystal form shifted uncomfortably. You were right about one thing, Jake continued. We are unpredictable. We do make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. We do sacrifice efficiency for sentiment. The crowd was completely silent now. But those same qualities, the ones you called weaknesses, are what saved us all. Our emotions gave us the strength to keep fighting when logic said we should surrender. Our unpredictable behavior confused an enemy that had defeated every logical opponent. Our sentiment made us willing to die for people we had never met. A young Vextar in the crowd spoke up. Why did the humans save us? We had rejected them. We had insulted them. Logic would suggest they should have left us to die. Amy stepped forward. Because that's not who we are, she said simply. We don't. And then didn't people, because they were mean to us. We don't let people die because they hurt our feelings. We save people because it's the right thing to do, even when it doesn't benefit you. Especially when it doesn't benefit us, Jake replied. That's what makes it meaningful. Dr. Hayes, who had been studying the cultural impact of the war, addressed the crowd. The void touched fed on organized, logical thought patterns. They were perfect predators for a galaxy full of perfectly logical civilizations. But they couldn't digest chaos. They couldn't understand love. They couldn't process sacrifice. So our chaos saved us, one of the crystal beings observed. No, Hayes replied. Our humanity saved us, and our humanity saved you too. As the memorial service ended, the various species began to mingle in ways that had never happened before. Humans shared food with insect beings. Crystal creatures told stories to energy beings. The rigid barriers that had separated the species for millions of years were beginning to break down. Admiral Sullivan found herself talking to a group of young aliens who wanted to join the new combined fleet. They came from different species, but they all had the same look in their strange eyes. It was a look she recognized from young human recruits. Why do you want to serve? She asked them. Because we want to learn, said a young luminary. We want to learn how to be brave like humans. You want to learn how to fight without logic, added a young Vextar. You want to learn how to care about others more than yourself, said a crystal being who couldn't have been more than a few decades old. Sullivan smiled. Those aren't things you can learn from books or computers. They come from here. She pointed to her heart. And here. She pointed to her head. but mostly from here. She pointed to her heart again. Will you teach us? They asked. We'll teach each other, Sullivan replied, because that's what families do. The word hung in the air. Family, not alliance, not coalition, not mutual,